Okay, hiya folks. So what we're going to look at today is some of the functions in RadarOpus for working with families and groupings. So some of the basic features that we've looked at previously we're not going to go over, so there will be some things I'll do that I won't explain in a lot of detail because we've looked at them all before. So if you want to refresh your memory about them, you've got all the training videos that are built inside the program, or you could pop on YouTube or Home University and have a search for RadarOpus there. There's heaps and heaps of videos online with those basic functions. We're going to focus really on the family and grouping information today. There's actually quite a few different ways that we can access this information depending on how you want to see it and what you want to do with it. I'll show you a couple of places to begin with. We start with just looking at the databases, because obviously in a program like RadarOpus it's a database where all the family information lives, and you can actually browse this database as if it were a repertory. So one of the first places that we can access the information on families and groupings is in our table of contents here on the left hand side, actually in the repertory section. So you can see at the top of mine, the way I have mine set up, I have all my standard repertories organised by symptoms. So I'm just going to close that down and minimise that by clicking on this little arrow just to the left of the word repertories. And then I have all my concepts and groupings. So concepts and groupings is information where different authors have gathered their clinical experience into, I guess, a collection of symptoms. We'll refer to rubrics around the repertory. So we can look up things like angina, and get definitions of angina, risk factors for angina, also referrals to all the rubrics in the repertory that relate to angina. Or we could look up a mental theme. We could look up anxiety, or we could look up fear, or we could look up a whole range of different mental themes, and it will give us specific references to where we can find those particular themes. Or we could look up acute diseases. I can look up burns or injuries or those sorts of things. So these are all cross-references and actually works specifically with the synthesis repertory. So you can see the groups of concepts here on the left-hand side in my table of contents with this light bulb icons down next to them. So we can see, for example, I've got this theme here by Frederick Stroyens, has written one on acute diseases. So if I click the little arrow to the left of that to open that section up, I can see I've got a list of chapters or sections about acute diseases. So I might want to go to, say, psychological disorders, for an example. If I click on that, it's going to open up this book from the, open up this database. So we can see now here on my right-hand side, we've opened up the database for acute diseases by Frederick Stroyens. You can see the title in the tab across the top here. And here I can see the psychological disorders section. So I can see, for example, here's my psychological disorders for anxiety. I've got my definition. If I just rest my mouse on the little flag symbol next to that, I can see it's an acute or chronic sensation of fear associated with physical signs and symptoms. I could go to my acute anxiety of situation, look at details here. So response to strained events, generally transitory signs, symptoms, etc. And then I have a group of symptoms. Oh, sorry guys, I clicked on that. I shouldn't have clicked. Let's go back here. Here we go. So I've got a group of symptoms here. So I can see, for example, mind suspicious, chest depression, chest constriction, anxiety from anticipation, anxiety health about, etc. These are a range of rubrics from the repertory that relate to the psychological disorder for anxiety. So from here I could say, okay, mind suspicion looks interesting. I want to go find out more about that rubric, so I'll click it. And then it takes me back to the repertory, shows me this mind suspicious rubric, and I can see all the medicines there. So I'm just going to go back into that concept section again. There's two ways I could do that. I could once again click on my table of contents to go back to that section, or I can just jump back and forth because I've got these two databases open here. So in the top right hand corner I'll click that little arrow, just show that again. This little arrow just here, click it, and I'm going to go back into acute diseases. So here it is here. You can actually browse this section exactly the same as you do the repertory. It works in exactly the same way as what a repertory does. So I could go into my search and drop down, bring up find a rubric, exactly the same as you're used to doing. And you can see I've got these same sections as what I've got in the table of contents menu: psychological disorders, pediatrics, dermatological disorders, cardiovascular disorders, etc. So I may want to look in ear, nose and throat disorders. I can just click it or use my keyboard to type to get to it. And I can see the ear, nose and throat disorders that are listed here. We've got allergic rhinitis, coryza, croup, epiglottis acute, inflammation of the throat, etc. I may go to otitis media, your middle ear infections, and I click it, and I can see there's a list of all the sections here. So I'm going to go have a look at that just by clicking enter on my keyboard or pushing the go to button with my mouse. And you see it takes me to that section. So we're still in the acute diseases of Frederick Stroyens. We're looking at otitis media, and I've got information about etiology under that note, information about the pathology, information about the clinical symptoms, and then cross-references here to all the rubrics in the repertory or sections of the repertory that have to do with middle ear infections. So I might want to go look at the section for purulent discharges from the ear. I can just click on that and go look at the rubric. So all of these concepts essentially work the same way. If I go here, I'll go back into my Find a Rubric. So we can see here I could pick different sections if I want. I could go back and say, okay, show me pulmonary disorders, show me hematological disorders, or from my table of contents, I could look at a different concept. I may want to go to example for Zulian's concepts. So Zulian's concepts are all about mental themes, mental groupings. If I click on this one, open up the database, here it is here. It's a list of all his mental themes. So for example, the things abandoning, mind, delirium, abandonance, or relatives. If you're looking at someone's ability, someone's got issues around what their ability is, you could look up under the confidence section, or their eloquence, or their gifts, or they're unreliable, or they're witty. A whole range of different types of cross-references. The radar concepts, it's another one by Frederick Schroens. This is based around chronic disease, so I could look under cardiovascular disorders, angina pectoris, here we go, and here's a list of all the rubrics in different sections of the repertory that relate to symptoms you might experience during an attack of angina. I've also got veterinary concepts for the animal prescribers. There's books here like Roger Morrison's Desktop Companion. If you've looked at the physical book, it's a red one. I found this a really fantastically useful acute prescribing reference. I can go to this particular book, open it up, head and neck section, or if I bring up my chapters, head and neck, I see all the possible symptoms in the head and neck. Again, we've got an otitis media option. I've got a range of options here. I'm going to go straight to this section. Here we go, otitis media. I've got information about this. This is Roger Morrison talking about his experience treating the disease, homeopathic tips, allopathic tips, therapeutic tips, things you can do to manage the disease, different things that he does in his clinic. He'll suggest potencies, repetition, all those sorts of things, and then gives you cross-references to all the rubrics that you might think of. So for example, ear, abscess, meatus. If I click on that, I can go back to the repertory. So that's one of the ways that you can access it, either from the table of contents, or once you've opened up the database, you can access it the same way you would your repertory. But the other way you can also do it is actually if you're just browsing the repertory, looking at a rubric, you'll see next to this rubric, for example, ear, abscess, meatus, I've got that little light bulb symbol. Yeah? Exactly the same as the light bulbs that were in this table of contents here. So if I go to my light bulbs, I can see there are some associated concepts here. There's the head and neck, otitis media, peripheral organs, skin diseases, abscesses, surgical pathologies. So I can say, okay, I'm interested in finding out more about otitis media. I'll click it, and this actually takes me, see, it's taken me back to the Desktop Companion by Morrison, back to that concept, and I can see all the other rubrics which are related to that rubric via the disease otitis media. So let's go back into the repertory again. Let me show you a different example of that. So I might go into example the mind chapter just to make a nice simple example for you guys, and we'll look at fear of dogs. So if I look here at the rubric, mind, fear, dogs of, again, I've got a little concept icon next to here. If I rest my mouse on it, up comes the associated concepts. And I can see it may be related to psychological disorders, phobias, symptoms of the mind, attitudes towards animals, a range of different things here. If I go to all the attitudes towards animals and I click it, it's going to open up this particular document, which in this case is you can see in the top left-hand corner, the Children's Concepts by Petrucci. This is specific information related to children who have issues towards animals. And I can see all the rubrics related to issues towards animals. So I can see there's a mind animals section. Under the cruelty, there's some information about animals. Under the fear, there's lots of different animals. There's hatreds of cats. There's nature loves. There's sensitive. There's sympathetic. So all the different sections of the repertory where you can find information that's tangentially related to that rubric. It's a really useful way to find your way around the repertory and find rubrics that perhaps you wouldn't thought of before, because all you need to do is actually find one rubric that's even close to what you're looking for and click on that concepts icon, that light bulb symbol that's in the repertory. We'll just go back to that, just like this. And this is going to bring up a list of all the related groups of information, all the other bits and pieces you can find, or that other authors have found based on their clinical experience and based on their use of the repertory, which will guide you to other rubrics you can use. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to close them all down now. We're not going to look at the concepts in much more detail than that, so we'll just shut these all down. And what I want to do is close all windows. There we go. Repertory, I'll just open synthesis back up again. Okay, we'll close repertories. Alright, so that's our concept section. It's a really good idea to have a play around, have a look around in there. There's heaps of different information ranging from definitions to cross-references. Some of the concepts have got suggested medicines for the most common medicines for a particular disease situation or symptom situation. The next area I want to have a look at just below that, you can see we've actually got the databases for the families of remedies, so very specific kingdoms and groupings information. So there's a range of different databases here with different information. We've got Bonninghausen's concordances, all the information from the back of Bonninghausen's repertory where he compares medicines based on similar sections or symptoms of the body. We can look up, for example, which medicines have got head symptoms similar to sulfur or head symptoms similar to aconite and compare the medicines with each other. So you can see here it's a list of remedy names. So I may click on, for example, aconite. So here we've got Bonninghausen's concordances, all the information about aconite. So I can see aconite, mind and sensorium. Here are the 24 medicines that Bonninghausen identified as having mental symptoms very similar to aconite. Here's the aconite parts of the body. Here are the 47 medicines with tissue affinities very similar to aconite. Aconite sensations and complaints. Here is the aconite's external parts of the body, external organs in general, where they're similar medicines which are similar to aconite. So it's a useful way to compare medicines, or if you're giving a particular medicine, you think, I'm sure this looks like the head symptoms of aconite and it's not working, you could look up under here and see the other medicines that have been identified as having head symptoms very, very similar to aconite. I'm going to close this back down again by clicking the arrow just to the left of where it says Bonninghausen's concordances. So we've got the bowel-nosode relationships here. So I can go in, for example, into Morgan-Gärtner, the related remedies, click this, and I've got a list here of my medicines which are related to Morgan-Gärtner, the bowel-nosode. Minimize that again. I've got Boyd's families, people who work with Boyd's families or Dorsey's families. There's 5 element groupings by Rosenthal. We've got Hahnemann's disease classification by Stotella. This is a open up here. This is a miasmatic grouping that Stotella's put together based on Hahnemann's system of miasmatic prescribing. If we close this one down. The big one here, we've got Kingdoms and Families by Will Tail. This is the big scientific grouping of all the kingdoms and families information. So you can see if I open this up, I've actually got several sections here. I've got my minerals, and chemicals, other families, I've got my viruses, I've got my bacteria, got a whole range of different family groupings here, and including the most common ones we talk about, of course, plants, animals, etc. So we're going to look at some different ways to access this one shortly, but if you want to access it via this window, I could click on the minerals and chemicals, for example, and it's going to open up on this side of my screen here, the minerals and chemicals information, and I can see the whole range of different relationships. I can see my hydrogens, my metallic elements, my alkali metals, my alkaline earth metals, etc. And browse is exactly the same as you would with a repertory. You can bring up your table of contents. Okay. So in this case, this one document contains all the different groupings. We get chapter options. So I could say, let's look in the minerals, let's look at the organic compounds, let's look at the pharmaceutical groups, let's look for the antipyretics. So here are the medicines which we know of as antipyretics. And you can browse through and look at the whole range of different kingdoms and groupings and information in there. Also by Will Tail, we've got a miasmatic family grouping. This has got a couple of sources in here. It's got Chaudhary sources, also collected sources. So again, exactly the same thing. I can click on Chaudhary, open up this section, and I can see according to Chaudhary, these are the psoric medicines, these are the tubercular, these are the cancer, and I can browse that exactly the same as I would any other repertory database. I can open up and have a look. Let's look at the cancermycin. Here it is here. Minimize that one. We've got a grouping here for Bentley's, miasm's dominance in the 7 colour groups. This is Grant Bentley's work on homeopathic facial analysis and his miasmatic groupings. We can see in this particular document there's 2 listings. There's the confirmed listing. So for example, I can see the HFA blue grouping. It's been confirmed, so these are the ones he's certain belong to the blue grouping. And I've also got the HFA blue, which contains some additional medicines which are tentatively being placed in that particular group. Again, I'll show some more ways to access this stuff shortly. I've got the nosode families by Frederick Schroens, the bowel nosodes, my disease nosodes, the periodic table, the classical approach to the periodic table, and also the element theory approach to the periodic table, things at different levels of, I guess, scientific accuracy to how they group it and how broad the groupings are. You can access your related remedies from here. So I can see, for example, I could look at, I've got an alphabetical listing of all my medicines here. I could look at analonium and see it's similar to aconite, anise, and etc. So I can go through and read all that and use that information from the table of contents. I've got Sancharon's families. These are Sancharon's plant families. These are actually separate to the other groupings on the scientific families because Sancharon breaks his sections up into different methods. He uses the Dahlgren, I guess, scientific grouping. It's one of the older scientific groupings, but he breaks it down at different levels and different groupings based on also homeopathic information, what was clinically useful using his method. So there's a separate section here. You can look at the Compositae family according to Sancharon and the way that he's grouped things together with his work, which is a little bit different than the scientific version of the Compositae, which is now called the Asteraceae, but you can access his information via here. Sancharon's miasms, of course, are here as well. You can look at his groupings. State of matter, you can break things down if they're liquids or solids, etc. And testes families are here. So these are the actual databases themselves. If you want to go through and read the specific database, this is the way that you can access it. Of course, this is not the fastest or the simplest way to access it. This is just a way of presenting and saying, here's the database, here's the information. So if you want to read through, look through it in a repertorial type manner, that's one of the ways you can access it. If you want a really quick way to access a specific grouping, though, they've built it in a really, really nifty way in Opus, where we've got this Families tab at the top of the table of contents here. So if I click on that, you can see essentially what I've got here is an alphabetical listing of every single family grouping that exists that you may think of using in your practice. So for example here, if I want to look at the snakes, up in the search box, up in the top, I can just start typing snake. And you can see here's my snake grouping. So from this I can either left click that, which you can define specific default actions according to your preference what you want it to do, or if I right click you'll see the whole range of options. I'm going to do a right click now. If I right click, so I can see I could go to this family in the family repertory, so open up that database and show me the snake family. If I click on that one, here it is here. Here's my serpents, my snake family, the various groupings, they're the different scientific groupings, and I can see which medicines are proven in homeopathy that exist in different groupings. You'll see quite a few of these groupings are actually empty because we've never proven any medicines or we don't have any materia medica for medicines that exist in those groupings. Some of them, like the Elapidae, we've got quite a few. We've got 7 snakes in that particular group. Or I could right click on this. I could choose limit my analysis to this family. If I've done a repertorization, this is one of the ways I could say let's limit my analysis and show it to me with only the snakes. If I pop a rubric in my clipboard so I can give you an example of that. So I'm just going to go back into synthesis and I'm just going to drag a random rubric into my clipboard. Hopefully it's got a snake in it. It does, good. So we go back to snakes. I'll do a right click and say limit my analysis to this family. So up comes my analysis, and I can see in the rubric Mine Morning, there's only one snake that's there, which is Lachesis. Going back to the table of contents, I could also search for this family in, and I can choose here what I want to search. So basically I'm telling the program I want to find out information about the snake family of medicines. I could say, let's show me information about the snake family of medicines in all of my open repertories. In this case, I've got synthesis as my repertory. I've also got those family databases I had open. So here it's on a list, and straight away here is a listing of all the rubrics from all those databases that I had open that have got snakes medicines in them. If I go back to my families database, back to snakes, search for this family in, I could also say search for it in the materia medica. I'll click on that. And it's going through doing a search for me now, and straight away it's brought up all the materia medica for all the snake family of medicines. I can see Alan up here, for example. If I click on Alan, so here we've got Bothrops, Crotalus horridus, etc. All the snake groupings of information. We'll come back and look at this particular search window in more detail shortly. Go back to my family table of contents, snakes, do a right click, search for this family in. I could also specify particular types of materia medica, so it's just search for provings of snakes, or just search for keynotes, or just search for clinical cases where a snake was used. I can go through and specify exactly what it is that I'm looking for. Of course, I can also search more broadly than that. I could go, take me to Wikipedia, take me to Google Images, take me to George Viltukas's books section. You can go on online hosting of George's books and go through and search for them and find information on snake medicines. If I do the Wikipedia example so you can see how that works, I'll just click here on Wikipedia. So this opens up the built-in web browser inside my program. It takes me directly to the Wikipedia page about snakes, and I can go through here and read all the information that's hosted on Wikipedia. Okay. So using this family section here, this is one of the really fast ways that you can access information about the different groupings. You can essentially do the vast majority, I think virtually all of the functions of the program directly from here, and it's a very simple way for you to search because you can just type in snakes. You don't need to know, the different groupings. You don't need to know that snakes is part of the chordata family or that they're even an animal. You can just type in the word snake and take you directly to what you want. It's especially useful, I think, with things like the plant family, where often we know a lot of information about the Compositae, the Asteraceae, for example. We know a lot about them as a group because we know Arnica, and we know Bellus perennis, and we know Chamomilla, and we know Hypericum, and we know all these medicines very, very well. But probably not a lot of us really understand the specifics of the scientific grouping and which particular branch they fall under, which family, and which class, and all those bits and pieces of information. So I can just very quickly go to my families table of contents and just start typing in composite, and I can see my different Compositae family here. So I've got my Compositae family with Sankaran's method. I've got my standard Compositae. I've got which is the APG1. I've got my Compositae by Cronquist. I've got my Compositae by Dahlgren. So these are different scientific groupings, different people's systems of accessing these. Dahlgren is one of the older ones. Cronquist is a separate one based on different information. The most modern version is the APG2, which is actually in the process of being replaced by the APG3, but it was not been released for us yet. But the APG2 is based on modern genetic testing. So you can see there's actually no Compositae coming up saying it belongs to the APG because the Compositae doesn't exist in the newest scientific groupings. It's actually now called the Asteraceae. So if I search for Asteraceae, you can see it's under APG2. Okay, so that's how we can access stuff from our families table of contents window. Let's look at some different things. I want to take you through and show you some of the search functions and search features and how we can use that. So I'm going to close down this web browser with Wikipedia in it, and I'm going to close down my analysis, and actually we'll go back to my search. I'm going to click the eraser just to clear this previous search that we've done, and take me back to my empty search window. So if you've not already got this window open, you can launch it just by clicking this magnifying glass in the toolbar at the top here. That will take us to our search window. So there's two search modes that we can use. There's a simple search mode or an advanced search mode. What you're seeing on my screen at the moment is a simple search mode where you see just this one line, and you can tell that we're in there also because this particular button just here has been depressed, which is simple search mode. I can also change into advanced search mode, which brings up multiple options for me. So using the simple search mode, I can just type what I'm looking for. So if I typed in snakes, for example, you can see it gives me the options of all the different information about snakes. The first option there in black print, you can see snakes is searching for it just as a word. I want to search for snakes as a family. So rather than searching for the word snake, where I'm getting information like fear of snakes, etc., I want to search for snakes as a family and get the actual symptoms of the snake family. So I click enter or click the go search button, and up comes all the information about snakes. And you can see in this case up the top, I've got my option here set to search in all mature medica. Again, exactly the same as the right click via the table of contents window option. I could specify something different, search in the repertories or just the open repertories or mature medica or mature medicas of a certain type like provings or journals, etc. I can just click on the one I want and it will bring that information up for me. That's a simple search method for bringing up family information, but this gets really, really useful when we start to compare it or join it with other information. So for example, I've searched here for snakes. If I add just the word fear and do my search again, it's going to go through and do a search for me, and this has found all the information about fears in the snake family of medicines. This is not fear of snakes, because if you fear of snakes, it's just like searching for two words. I've searched for the fears of the snake family of medicines. So we can see here, for example, Crotalus cascavella. Here are the fears that are coming up this is in Archibald's keynotes document for Crotalus cascavella. Fear of ghosts, spirits, voices, fear of being alone, fear of rain, strokes or snakes, fear of being left alone as if something horrible might happen, fear of rain, etc. And in my table of contents, I've got my search results come up, show me all the other documents that have got information about fear and snakes in them. So if I go, for example, the Ferric Masters, Snakes in Homeopathic Grass, I can click that document. Up comes in my search window all the information about the fears of different snakes in that particular book. Go back to my table of contents, I could click on Vermeulen's Concordant, for example. So up comes all the information from Vermeulen's Concordance where snakes are listed as having a particular fear, and I can go through and read and find out what those fears are. So this is searching from the Materia Medica. If you wanted a more specific list of rubrics you can use, again, using that same drop-down, I could say search in the repertories. I'll say search all repertories just by clicking it. So it's going through all the repertories now, and found all the repertories got any information about rubrics containing snakes that pertain to fears, and I can see here's a list of all my fears that snakes exist in. So in this simple search, you can just basically type in the keywords of what you're looking for and specify if you're looking for a family and bring up the results. I'm going to click the eraser to clear that search and go into the advanced search mode. So under the advanced search, we can actually put lots and lots more details in and really specify the things that we want to find. So again, this is doing the exact same search we just did. I'm going to show you the exact same search, but show you how you do it from the advanced search mode. So under words, I could say I'm looking for fears. Under families, I can say I'm looking for snakes and do my search. So it's going through the same results as before. We've just done it using the advanced search mode. I can see here's all my fears with the snakes in synthesis. If I clicked on Bogen-Bonninghausen's repertory, here's all the fears that snakes occur in with Bogen-Bonninghausen's repertory. Again, I can use my drop down to specify actually I want to search something different. Now let's search in all the Materia Medica. I can click the all Materia Medica. It will go through and do that search for me. Here's all the Materia Medica information about fear of snakes. So the real advantage with this advanced search version is you can start breaking things down and choosing different combinations and being quite precise in what you want to find. I'm going to click the eraser to clear that search. And let's look at a different example. That was looking at a family together with a word. We could also do other things, like for example we may want to look at say pathology. I could go under my families and say I'm still interested in the snakes family. But what I'm trying to do is find cases of migraine, cases where someone was treated for migraine with a snake medicine. So at the end here, under cases, chapters, pathologies, etc., I type the word migraine, and this gives me a whole range of options. I'm going to choose migraine case pathology. This is a way of saying I want to find cases where the pathology was migraine. I'll do enter to keep my search going. So because I've combined those two together, migraine case pathology and also the family of snakes, this search is finding cases of migraine that were treated with snake medicines. And I can see I've got one from Ferret Masters, nausea, 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 and one from the journal, the Homeopathic Review. So I can scroll through and read, here are some cases where a snake medicine was used to treat the pathology of migraine. If I had to search that without the snake medicine there, I'll just click this little minus button to remove the snake family and just search for migraine cases pathology. See, in this case, I get all the different types of migraines that are out there. If I want to specify a family, I can just add that in. So let's clear that one. Okay. So you can also combine other types of information. Say, for example, you're trying to compare a medicine to a different group of medicines. I might say under remedies, I'm looking at the medicine sepia. So I can choose sepia, and I want to look at where it's also got rubrics in common with the snake family. So I'll do a search. So here we go, we've got in the synthesis again, because that's I was saying searching only the open repertories, and these are the rubrics which contain sepia as well as snake medicines. So these are the symptoms that are similar between sepia and snakes. So I can browse through and see a list, or I could go into, this is in synthesis. I've also got these, essentially their repertories, these family databases open. I can see I'm getting one result come up from Bentley. If I click on that, we can see in the HFA group red, that contains sepia as well as snakes. Under Bonninghausen, we can see all the ones that contain sepia as well as snakes, his relationships on Bonninghausen's concordances. So we can see, for example, hyoscyamus nausea, its mind and sensorium symptoms are similar to sepia as well as the snakes. That makes a lot of sense. I could look under Schroyen's related remedies, see all the remedy relationships that contain both sepia and the snakes. The kingdoms, of course, and the miasmatic groupings, there'll be lots and lots of results there. So in the search window, you can really pick those bits and pieces of information and combine them together as much as you want to. We did a combination, you're searching for fear under words and also the family of snakes. We could search for remedies as well as families. We could search for cases as well as a family, or chapters as well as a family, pathologies as well as a family. We can group those together and combine them however we want to find the different bits of information that are out there and choose the ones that we want to use. So let's look at some different stuff now. I'm going to actually I'll go back to my search results and let's click on synthesis just so I can bring up some of these rubrics. So from these rubric results, I could click on these to go to the repertory, or I can actually drag and drop them from here directly into my clipboard. So I'm actually going to randomly pick a few of these. So I've got some rubrics in my clipboard to show you guys some other stuff with. I'll click these ones. Okay, so pop those few in, and I'll pick one more. I'll click on this one to go to the repertory. Here we go. and we'll drag and drop. Okay. Okay, guys, can you hear me okay? I'm just getting a message that I'm having some audio problems. Is my voice coming through at the moment, guys? Hey guys, am I back? Can you hear me now? Hey guys, can you hear me? Great, thanks guys. Sorry, I'm not sure what that is. I think my internet vanished for a second. Okay. Alright, good. Okay, we're back again. So sorry, I'll just repeat that again. So I was just saying that I was just dragging some rubrics into my clipboard just so I've got some options to show you guys. So from this search window here, you can drag and drop rubrics directly into your clipboard. Or if you click on them, you can go to the repertory itself and drag and drop them from the repertory into your clipboard. Okay, so we've got some rubrics in our clipboard now. I'm just going to open up my analysis. You can see it's still got this limitation to the snakes that I applied there earlier, so I'm going to get rid of that. So let's have a look at some of the family options from within the analysis window. You can see I've got this family icon in my analysis window, exactly the same as the families icon that's up the top in my table of contents. I click my drop down. So I'm going to choose this first option, remove the families restriction, just to get rid of that previous families restriction. So underneath here you can put a couple of shortcuts for the family groupings you like to use frequently. Things like, I've got here imponderables, plants, animals, the periodic table, nosodes, etc. You can customize that to the specific groups that you want to use or that you'll use most frequently. The important thing I want to bring out here is if you've used any family limitation under this tree, you've got the option to remove the family restriction to turn it off. So for example, if we look at it the way we did previously by the families table of contents, we're going to look here to the Asteraceae. We'll use that one because it's already there. I'm going to do a right click and say limit to this family. So here's that repertorization with only the Asteraceae. We've got Arnica, Camella and Tarax. I can see here plants, APG2. So this is all the details about the Asteraceae grouping. So if I want to turn that off and go back to my repertorization with all of my rubrics, I'll just do the drop down and click remove the families restriction. So that will remove that and bring me back to all the groupings. So the section which is probably certainly the prettiest and one of the really useful ones to browse around and move through different family groupings is the maps. And there's actually two ways we can access the maps. Same as we've got these two buttons that give us information about the families. We've also got these two buttons here that look like silver globes. This gives us information about the maps. So I can click here from within my analysis, select an illustration. So these are visual maps. These are image-rich groupings that take you through different people's approach to working primarily with family groupings. There's also some non-family information in there as well. Or I can access the same thing from this drop-down at the maps at the top here. Or if I click on the maps icon itself, it launches this maps window and I can flick through the different maps that are available. So we can see my first grouping back here. I'll just go back. I've got Grant Bentley's homeopathic facial analysis. I've got Margaret Greville's information on trees, Alistair Gray's provings, Little Zola's work on homeopathic psychiatry. This is Margaret Plevier's information on the actinides, the metals. I've got Sankaran's work. I've got Scholten's. I've got Shaw's work on the birds. Will Taylor's kingdoms information. Vermeulen's Materia Medica's. It's also got information here on his work with nosodes and bacteria as family groupings. And Anna Vivarka's information on the vital approach, which is an anglicised version of the sensation method of Sankaran on the Bombay School. So you can use this to browse through in a visual type way and just click on the one that you want to choose. Or from either of the drop-down menus, either in the analysis window or in the main toolbar, I could drop down and choose the grouping that I want to use. So for example, if I'm a Bentley prescriber, I could choose on Grant Bentley's homeopathic facial analysis. And that pops this information window that's got the different groupings according to Grant Bentley's system. So I can see I've got the colour groupings or the miasmatic groupings. And this becomes a whole area of things you can click on. So you can see if I rest my mouse along this window, I can click on these different spots. So if I click on, say, the red group, for example, this brings me into the primary colours overview. I can see the basic information about the yellow, the red, the blue, the facial features, etc. If I click on the we'll go to the yellow. So I can see the different family groupings or the facial features that we use to identify the yellow grouping. This is the yellow grouping is the I guess terminology that Grant uses for soric miasm. And you can see there's a change here. When I actually rest my mouse over this yellow box here of Sora, you can see up appears this bar graph. This is actually the same as the bar graph up the top of our program here, the analysis, which launches our repertorization. This is the program's way of telling me if I click this area of the image, it's going to take me back to my repertorization and filter it to show me only the medicines that belong to this grouping. So if I click this here, it's going to take me back to my repertorization. In this case, it's showing me the HFA yellow, the soric group from the confirmed grouping. So here are my yellow medicines according to Bentley's system from this particular repertorization that we were doing. I'll turn that repertorization off again by removing the families restriction and go back. Let's look at a different grouping. So we could go in and look at Scholten's work, for example, for our mineral family. I can see I've got my periodic table here, and I can click on any area of this to go into a particular grouping that I'm looking at. So I've got keywords, for example, for periods and rows. If I click on that, here's Scholten's keywords, for example, the hydrogen series, the carbon series, the silicon series. I could go to the stages or columns and see keywords, stage 1, stage 2, up to stage 18. In more detail, stages 1 through 9. Or in more detail, I click where it says stages 1 through 10. And I can also go from here and limit my analysis to that grouping. So say I'm thinking this sounds like a stage 10 medicine to me based on the details I've read in this summary of Scholten's work. I can click on where it says stage 10. You'll see that same graphic comes up with the analysis button. Click that, it takes me back to my analysis, and here is my medicines that contain something from stage 10. So we can see calcarb contains carbon, which is part of stage 10. Calicarb contains carbon from stage 10. Silica is the stage 10. Graphite is carbon in stage 10. So these are mostly carbon and silica salts. We've also got platina, which is also from stage 10. So it's limiting it to the group that I want to use. Or I could go in, we'll go back to Scholten again, and say I want to look at the ferrum series here. I can click on that. And this brings up my keywords for the ferrum series, also keywords for each of the individual elements from within them. So if I clicked on where it says ferrum series, this box at the top, it will limit it to the ferrum series, or I could click on one of the individual metals here, or elements, or metals, and go to my repertorization and see just those. For example, if I clicked on calcium, take me back to my repertorization, and here are just the medicines that contain calcium. So again, some more families under the maps. One of the most comprehensive ones here is Wills-Taylor. This is Wills-Taylor's families information. This is all the scientific groupings. So if I click on this one, you can see I've got my development, imponderables, minerals, viruses, Monera, the nosodes, the plants, the fungi, and the animals. And I can move through these and look at different information. If I click on animals, here we go, another developmental line in terms of how complex the animal species is. The most complicated of all, the chordata, the animals with backbones. I can click on chordata, and I can see all the different groupings of animals that have got a backbone. I can see one of them is mammals. If I click on where it says mammals, you can see that same little symbol comes up showing it's going to limit me to just those medicines in my analysis. I click on that. So here are the animal medicines and mammal medicines coming up. Carcinosin, ambergris, laccanine, carboanimalis, and bar placenta. So again, go back to under maps. I'll click my drop down. I could also look at Anna Vivarca. Anna Vivarca I find is a useful one, particularly if you're new to kingdom prescribing or you're not so familiar with the scientific part, because she breaks them down into the nice simple groupings that we like to use very commonly. So this is based on Sankron's work. So the miasmatic information is based on Sankron's miasms. The kingdom stuff is just general kingdom information. So if I click on kingdoms, I can see I've got the different groupings, animal, plant, mineral, or nosodes. I could go into the animal, for example, and she gives me the sub-kingdoms, the mammals, the birds, the snakes, the sea creatures, the insects, the spiders, with keywords for those groupings according to our understandings. But I could click on snakes, we'll go back to snakes, and that will take me back to my analysis and limit it to just a particular snake medicines. So I can see here, with this repertorization, we've got Lachesis, Dendropolyapsis, Najar, and Vipera. So this is all accessible under the maps section. We've also got Vermeulen's fungi groups are here. This is some new information that's coming out with his latest books on the fungi and the Monera. I can look under here, for example, fungi kingdom, and he brings me up all the information, the affinities, the disposition, etc., the information about them. I can look in molds, see the information about the molds, the affinities, the different molds that exist in homeopathy. And again, once I reach this endpoint, you can see I've got my mouse is showing that bar graph. It's going to take me back to the periodic table. Let's have a, sorry, not from the periodic table, back to my repertory analysis. I'll click on that. We'll see if we've got any molds in the analysis. No, not in this case. There's not any molds in our group. So we'll just turn that one back off again. Okay. So that's the basic idea of moving around it. The way you want to access the family information, I guess, depends how you want to see things. The fast, very simple way, just based on the text, is I can go directly to this families grouping, and I've got an alphabetical listing here of all the different family groupings. I could say, I just want to go to spiders, see all my spiders groupings, and choose the option. Limit my analysis to this family. Click it. So here's the spiders in that grouping. Turn that one off again. Or I could go into my maps. I'm looking for the spiders. I could access this in a few different ways. I could go to the Advarka system if I'm a sensation method prescriber. Go into my animals, look at my insects, just limit to the insects. So I don't have any spiders there. We will turn that one off. Or I could go into Will Taylor's groupings if I'm more of a, scientific bent. I'm going to look at the different details of the different levels. I can go to Will, Kingdoms, look at the animals. He's got a section on the arthropods. And I could specify I want specifically the arachnids. Here's my different groupings. So I could go to the entire arachnid family, which also contains scorpions and that kind of stuff. Or I could break it down and say, I just want the arania, which is the actual spiders. Click on that. So I've got tarantula. I'll remove that restriction. The other thing you can do, and there's a separate family information window we can access via individual medicine names. So you can access this from the medicine names in the repertorization here, from the medicine names in the repertory, or from the remedy names in the table of contents for the remedies. It's often very useful to get to via the analysis. For example, if I've done this repertorization, I'm thinking, well, this sounds like sepia, but I've given sepia. Sepia didn't work very well. I want to see the family groupings which are related to sepia, show me medicines that may be similar to sepia. I can click onto the word sepia, my left mouse button, and it's going to launch that remedy information window. This is the same place we've accessed before to see keynotes and multimedias, etc. There's a tab here also for families. If I click on this, this is going to show me all the family groupings that are specific to the medicine sepia. So I can see, for example, under my kingdoms and families, sepia belongs to the animals, it's a mollusk, it's a cephalopod. I can see the specific groupings inside the cephalopods that it belongs to. So animals that are all head and all feet. Analogic groups, so broader groupings, I can see it's under the sea remedies and also under the sea animals. Miasmatic families, I can see Chaudhary puts it in psoriasis, tubercular, cancer, and mixed miasm. Collected sources have got a whole range of different miasms. Sankaran's put it under the leprosy miasm. I can see the related remedies here. It's complementary medicines, it's inimicals, it's followed well by. I can see Bonninghausen's concordances. So all the areas where we can choose medicines which are similar to sepia. And I can also see the related bowel nosodes. The advantage of accessing it this way is it's specifically related to a medicine that's come up in your repertorization, but also we can click on these and see the other groupings. So for example, I might say, okay, I want to look at, let's look at the remedy relationships. So we've been giving sepia. Sepia is not working. I'm trying to find what are the other medicines in my repertorization which are similar to sepia. So if I click here where it says sepia, similars, I get a listing come up. It's 105 medicines which have been identified as being similar to sepia. 2 archetypal remedies, so Bryonia and Pulsatilla, are the ones which are best known for being similar to sepia. And I have a button in my bottom corner here, limit analysis to this family. If I click on that, it takes me back to my repertorization. But in this case, we're seeing only the medicines which are similar to sepia. All the other medicines have been hidden from view. So I can see Nux vomica is very similar, Ignatius similar, Calcarba similar, Arsenicum similar, Lycopodium similar, etc. Essentially, we've broken the repertorization down and said, you know what, I was giving sepia, it's not working, what's the other similar medicines? And here's a list of them here from a repertorization. Maybe you want to go on and pick Nux vomica as an example. See, I think it's fairly well known as an acute medicine of sepia, quite closely related. Or I can go back. I'm going to close. Actually, I'm going to turn that filter off. So remove the families restriction. I'll just show you how I access that again by clicking on sepia. It'll open up this section. Or I could choose, show me the medicines that follow well after sepia. I can click sepia, follow well by. There's 48 of them. Limit analysis to this family. Click it. Here are the medicines that follow well after sepia. I can go back to my remedy by going with the tab also. I might want to say, let's look at from a family kingdoms perspective. Let's have a look and see what are the other C remedies which are out there. A limit to this family. Some of the C medicines in my repertorization, I've got sepia, calc-carb, nat-mer, ambergris, calc-sil, and calc-phos. Let's click back. Sepia. I might want to go through based on a miasmatic thing. Just show me the psoric medicines coming up with Choteau's psoric system. A limit to this family. Here they are here, sepia, arsenicum, lycopodium, sulfur, etc. So you can go through and look at the different groupings and the relationships this way. You can access the same information via the repertory. From my repertorization, from a rubric, I can say let's click on silica. This brings up the same window. And I can go to families and see all the information about the silica families that silica belongs to, the kingdoms, the miasms, etc. The related bowel nosodes. I could limit to this family. And you can access the same functionality from that families as well. We can go through here. For remedies, so looking at remedies. If I look at sepia, in my families remedies table of contents, I can right click, search for it in all different documents, different groupings here. Or if I go to information on the remedy, launches this same window here, takes me through all the family groupings that sepia belongs to.